now to The Cloud. And welcome everybody to the day one of a Free Thinkers Corner. May is for mystery. Tonight we're going to kick things off with Dale T. Phillips. He's formerly from Maine, now lives in Massachusetts. He was a technical writer for software developers. He was also a salesman, a golf pro shop assistant, holiday Santa, a blackjack dealer. He's published over 70 short stories, collections, articles, jokes, and poetry, which I didn't know. He's appeared on stage, television, and an independent film called Throg, and he's been on Jeopardy. Dale, thank you for joining us. Thank you for starting off our month-long series.
Thank you, Chris. It's different not seeing everybody that's in on the meeting here. So
it is. For everybody who is joining us, we ask just to keep your mics off and your video off, just to keep down confusion. But if you have any questions, type them in the chat box. Trying to do three things at once here. On Facebook Live, anybody over there, please use the chat box, and we will. I'll answer. I won't answer them. I'll have Dale answer the questions for you. So let's start with this. You are also, amongst all these other things, you know what? I'd like to know about Throg. What is Throg?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I have these two longtime friends up in Maine, and one got a video camera, and they created this character, and they filmed a short, like a 3-minute short. This dumb character with an attitude. And they showed this as a trailer at a film festival, and the audience went nuts. And they looked at each other and said, oh dear, we may have something. So over the course of like 3 years, they cobbled together a script. I came in, helped them a little with that, acted in some of it, and they put something together, and we showed this at the 2006 Boston International Film Festival, where we were up against, people who had films with Academy Award winners in them, with budgets like 20 times what we had spent in it, and we won Best Cinematography. And it's this idiot who he's an avatar of the gods, and he time travels through history, causing havoc, just absolute mayhem. And he's pursued by the other avatars of the gods. We're having a contest to see which one will survive. And this one really giant evil avatar just kills all the rest of them, and yet cannot get his hands on Throg. And it's just this hilarious, misadventures of going through time, and you're like, he's too dumb to actually root for, but still you're like, oh gee. And it's a pastiche, it's an homage of Monty Python and Arthurian legends, all the different movies, the bad horror sword flicks and things like that, with a lot of comedy thrown in. And I think it's best if people watch it stoned, but because
okay.
If you know the story, if you're following the story, you're like, you get it. But if you're not, you're like, what is this? Because they're doing flashbacks, and they just shift back and forth in time, and you're like, whoa. So it's actually up for sale again. Amazon was selling it illegally for a while, and now I think it's been bundled and is actually up for sale in another format. So there you go. So knock on Amazon.
Yeah. Okay. So that's twice now. That's your limit of the A word.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but I'm knocking them, so that's okay. No, but
right.
I've actually gone to conventions selling books, and I've seen these D-level actors, selling, copies of their movies and autographs, and I'm like, I've got better credentials than they have. I mean, come on.
Now, is this something that you helped write, or
that one I only wrote like little bits and pieces of it, a little bit of dialogue. Actually, the director and I collaborated on a short political film called The Nine. This was back, and it was a parody of Lord of the Rings, using the Supreme Court, the Nine, comparing them to the Nazgul, and the then current president as a disturbed little hobbit running through, this hellish landscape, with his precious. So that one was a lot of fun. We'd hoped it would be totally irrelevant, but then it just got worse and worse, and it really was accurate.
So you mentioned legends and myths. One of your books has to deal with that, and we'll definitely talk about that because I'm very interested in a couple things about that. But let's start with your original books, your 6-book series, your Zack Tyler Mysteries.
Zack Taylor, yes.
Zack Taylor Mysteries. My apologies. The first one is called "A Memory of Grief." It's about an ex-con, Zack Taylor. He's a man drifting through life, haunted and guilt-ridden from a past gunshot tragedy. Um, his friend dies in Maine of an apparent suicide. Zack is driven to pursue the truth. Tell us about these and how they came about.
Yes, well, I wrote the other book, which we'll get to, Shadow the Wendigo, first, but it wasn't quite good enough to publish. So while we put that on the back burner, I learned more and more about the craft of writing. And I'd always wanted to do a series set in my very beloved Portland, Maine, and featuring that, you know, all the mystery writers, like Chicago, LA, you know, Boston, even Florida, you know, with the John D. McDonald, Travis McGee series. And I wanted a series that was kind of an homage to that. This character who was outside of regular society, like Travis was, but he's a lot more flawed than Travis was. He's got a lot of anger issues. He's got a lot of disturbing things in his past that just fill him with rage and guilt and anger. And the series is about him trying to control that, trying to fit in with normal society, even though he just can't. He's just not meant for the daytime world of people with regular jobs and things like that. And he's absolutely opposed against guns because of this past tragedy. And I said, now, what kind of a person would be interesting enough to get involved with mysteries, yet be opposed to guns, but be able to deal with people who do use them? So I created this character bit by bit. And it's like, he comes up with this very dark past, but you cheer for him because he's trying to become a better person. He tries so hard every day to become a better person. And even though he fails a lot of the time, he's trying to help people, but it's the law of unintended consequences. Bad things happen. I mean, when you're getting involved with really vicious groups of people, you know, bad things are going to happen. And sometimes even to the innocent. And that's the bad thing about it. And that, of course, makes him feel more guilty and more questioning of what he's doing. But the thing about him is, what we look for in mystery fiction is, why is this person trying to solve a crime? He is absolutely obsessed about getting to the truth. He starts off with finding about the truth of his friend's death. That leads him to further adventures of determining, like his friend, to try and help other people and try to stick up for the fight that they can't do against forces that they are totally overpowered against. And he tries to help. And he's just a bull in a china shop. So you watch him and you'll, when is he going to go off? When's he totally going to lose it? I mean, he's willing to break the law. I mean, he breaks into places. I mean, he commits assault. I mean, he will break the law to get at the truth. And that is, if you can use an axe, it can become effective. The trouble is, it's not the perfect tool for every job. Uh-huh. And he has to try and control that. So the series began with one situation and then started evolving more and more into different situations, different aspects of life in Maine.
One thing I noticed about all the books in the series, which, by the way, are available in our store, we have signed copies of all 6 books, and they're also available on bookshop.org for those who can't get to the store. You can also order them through our website. But one thing I did notice about all the books, the covers there's all different kinds of statues are on the cover. So the first one it looks like a graveyard or an angel kind of bowing, you know. Another maybe like the archangel Michael or something, or Gabriel with the sword on the second one. But all kinds of statues. What's the significance of those, and how'd you come about putting those on the cover?
That was a brilliant idea by my cover designer, who came up with the concept, you know, a memory of grief. And she came up with the concept, well, what about a statue that shows grief? I mean, the personification of grief. And so she came up with that image. I went, that's perfect. And so for the next, A Fall from Grace, it is the avenging angel. And the quote is from the Bible, "Oh, ye have fallen from grace." It's about these people that had everything, and yet through their actions and their greed, and they just come apart. And so that statue represented what it is to them. So every cover represents the theme of the book. And a shadow on the wall, you see the front and the back, it's one shadowy figure, and on the back it just fades. There's a series of them, and they fade into shadow, and that's it. Every single cover is a representation of the theme, and I thought that's just absolutely brilliant, tying the entire series together and being a very strong reminder of what the book is about.
Number 6, the last in the series. It's very kind of
Disturbing.
sad, haunting.
Yeah.
It's an old man. He looks like a priest or something, and very angular, very gaunt, and sharp nose, and just head down, eyes closed. Um, what's the backstory for that one?
That the minute I saw that image, I said, that's the cover for this book. Every book has these themes in it, and as it goes, I mean, Zack is the body count mounts, and so does his karmic debt, and it gets worse and worse with each book. And this character, I've had people look at that and they go, "Oh my God, that's horrific, this cover." And I go, yes, exactly. This is what it's meant to be. I mean, violence leaves a stain, and we see too many books, especially mystery fiction, where somebody is just shooting people and the police are like letting them off and all this, and there seems hardly any impact upon the person afterwards of what happened. I mean, they just kind of breeze through these absolutely horrific events in their life to them and the people around them. And I mean, James Lee Burke, I mean, his David Lee Robichaux, I mean, absolutely goes through some horrendous stuff, but he shows how it leaves a mark. And I wanted to do the same thing, of this accumulation of what this does to a person. This weighs you down. And I thought that cover perfectly represented that.
Yeah, it does. Are these actual statues, or
Yes,
are they?
yes. My cover designer goes through stock images and looks for things, purchases the images, and incorporates them into the cover design.
Did you design the? Well, did you come up with the title or even the story itself around the statue, or did you just look for
No.
what met the story?
The title and the theme come first. What happens is I use titles are all taken from aspects of literature. The Bible, Emily Dickinson, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the last words of Sir Walter Raleigh as he's led to the scaffold. That is a sharp medicine, because he's looking at the headsman's weapon and he goes, "'Tis a sharp medicine for all my ills." I mean, as your final words, to be able to pun like that. And I mean, what class, what panache to be able to pull that off. And yet such a cogent argument about the end of your life and what it all means. It's like brilliant stuff. And what I do is I use that theme of whatever the quote is, again, in the theme of the book. And then when we have that, it's just a matter of searching through images and go, that one, oh, that perfectly represents what we're looking for here. So I work with the cover designer and, what about these? Oh, that one, no. Yes, that one right there, until we come up with a perfect image.
One thing that's always fascinated me is when reading, when an author starts off a chapter or a section of the book with, or even inserts it into the text, a quote from something, another book or the Bible, or something. It always fascinates me how they could come up with that. How did you think of those quotes to use as your story and as your titles?
Great question. The first one, it was when I was reading the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the oldest known story that we have, that's actually still extant. And it was about the grief of the king Gilgamesh when his friend Enkidu is killed. And he just goes off the rails. And I go, hey, that sounds just like my story, where this character has this best friend, and when he's killed, that's his last anchor to the reality and any kind of a semblance of life. And he's only survived by keeping his emotions tightly packed down and not letting them loose. And when this happens, the cork comes out of the bottle and boom, it's all there. So I go, oh, that's great. Now for the second book, I had this character of a lofty position. And then we find out all the secrets and everything. And bit by bit, we understand that that person has fallen from grace, which leads to the tragic events of the book and everything that follows. It's like, oh, great. So now we've got a theme. So as I go on, I start to think of the plot of the book. I usually think of the opening scene and sometimes the closing of the book. And then I just have to work the bits in between. And sometimes I will come across the perfect quote that is just for that. For there, it was the Plato's cave, a shadow on the wall, Plato's cave of how we are like prisoners chained to a wall in a cave. And what we see are only shadows, images seen on the opposite wall. That's all we see of reality. And if we were actually shown the true reality, we wouldn't be able to accept it. And also it's an echo of Jung's shadow self. So those two themes are combined within that. A certain slant of light is just because I love the poems of Emily Dickinson and her poem, There's a Certain Slant of Light, Afternoons, and it perfectly encompasses a moment. And that's what I look for, is that moment of absolute clarity when you're writing and you illustrate something so perfectly, which she did. And then the Walter Raleigh with a Sharp Medicine and a Darkened Room was from, I was reading a quote from Nathaniel Hawthorne, and he was writing in American Notebooks about, he did that. A hole in the shutter and a shaft of sunlight coming through, illustrating a dead man in a darkened room. And I went, wow. He wrote that? And I went, oh, that's perfect. So there's my opening image, a dead man in a darkened room and just somebody looking in and seeing this image right there. And I go, there's the start. Now we got to get to the rest of it. So everything comes out of that. So whatever I find, I mean, I've got a list of potentials and it's whatever calls to me. I will definitely be using something from Shakespeare, but there's so many phrases. And if you notice, they all start with A. Mm-hmm. So it's A something something. And again, it's a theme which I've been able to carry through really well for 6 books. So we'll see if we can hopefully carry that on through more.
I wanted to mention over here on Facebook Live, Jed Power says, congratulations, Dale. Stoned? Wish I knew that side of you years ago.
Yes, I've known Jed for a number of years. I run across him at author events and things like that. He's got a series too, which is really good. I believe it's the Dan Marlowe series, and he writes about the seacoast in New Hampshire. Mm-hmm. And those are a lot of fun as well. You know, if you like your good summer beach reads, that's absolutely a must pick up. So
I'll definitely look into those.
Check out Jed Power.
The ZACK TAYLORs. So they're kind of a sort of a spiritual mystery combination type thing, or is it more of a supernatural?
No, there's only one supernatural event in the first book when he's at a cemetery and this woman comes up and they start having a discussion and he almost verbally assaults her because he's just so angry. And she's like, well, and she's trying to comfort him and he will not be comforted. And then he turns away for a second, he turns back and she's not even there. And now he's wondering, it's like, am I becoming unmoored? Am I so far gone that I'm seeing ghosts? And the ghost imagery continues through this series because so many people he's known and cared for have died, as well as people he didn't care for. And now he's got all these ghosts haunting him at night and during the day. So it's a burden. And the thing is that he struggles. He became an alcoholic at first, and his friend saved him from that simply by taking him up to Maine and getting him away. There was no liquor store within 50 miles. And after a while, you basically have to. And he has stayed away from it since, but it haunts him still. And that fight goes every day, especially with what he's going through, his struggle. And I've had people with substance abuse issues come up and tell me, they said, the struggle of your protagonist is akin to what I went through. It's real. And you really nailed it. And I'm like, wow, thank you. I mean, that's something when you've really captured a bit of life and it means something to somebody.
Is that something you looked into before you started writing to make sure that you get some sort of accuracy to it, or is it
Well,
just
there's a bit of family history, and there's people I've known and experiences, and I definitely wanted a troubled character, without the usual, a cop near the end of his, stretch
Mhm,
and divorced and all that. But this person is definitely not with the police. In fact, he has an antagonistic opposition with the police because he's
mhm.
been so far from the theory of law and justice that he's opposed to that, which also makes it harder when he's dancing around that, going back to jail every book. I mean, you never know if the hammer's finally going to fall.
Mhm. One thing that also fascinates me too is especially writers and even movies or long running TV shows really is character growth.
Hmm.
So he starts off as a sort of a fallen angel type thing, alcoholic, very troubled person. Without spoilers, does he grow or does he kind of fall deeper and deeper? Or does he get some sort of redemption or anything throughout the series? How do you keep that fresh?
Good question. Yes, with Zach, it is a dancing on the edge kind of thing, but he must he starts to let his emotions out, which he sees as a weakness, but it also improves his life. I mean, he starts to have relationships, which before, I mean, they just never worked out because you can't with somebody like that. And he has a stormy relationship trying to maintain that, but this darkness within him. And other people that want to be with him have to understand that darkness and deal with it if they can. And you see that progression as things go on of everyday life. I mean, nobody can stay completely down for long. I mean, there's moments of redemption and there's also setbacks. I mean, he tries to start a business. Maybe things don't work out. He tries something else. Maybe that doesn't work out, but he's always trying and trying.
Um, I just lost where I was going to go. Oh, so kind of back to the supernatural a little bit. You do have um, the next book, or not the next book, but the next book I like to talk about.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm trying to go do two different things here. Is is on sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier about myths, and you mentioned Jung as well. Somebody else you mentioned though on I assume is an inspiration for this next book is Joseph Campbell, and that would be Shadow of the Wendigo.
Yes.
Um, is it Wendigo?
When
Wendigo?
to
Does it
I say when to go. There's
Wendigo?
there's many different spellings and probably half a dozen different
Right.
pronunciations. I use when to go. Now the funny thing is I wrote that as a short story back when I was in college taking writing classes from Stephen King, and that piqued his interest. And it was just a short story. And when I began writing in earnest and trying to put a novel together, I knew that this was my first novel length idea. So I put the book together and it was not good enough, definitely. And I had to put that aside until I could figure out how to fix it because I didn't know. I mean, I'm mostly self taught, but by taking courses and the study of fiction, talking with other authors, taking classes, it was a long, intense study. And I had to write several of the Zach Taylor books first before I could come back to Shadow the Wendigo and find ways of fixing it. And I found a way to make it better, and I found another way to make it better, but it still wasn't quite there. And then at one point, several things came together actually like that. It was like a thunderclap, and it was bang, bang, bang. Perfect. That was the elements I needed. Incorporating those, put the rest of the book right over the top and made it into something. Yes, absolutely. So people say, how long does it take to write a book? And I say anywhere between 6 months and 35 years. And people and Kara, who did a great video review of Shadow the Wendigo, said, I can't believe you stayed with something for 35 years. That's older than she is. And she's like, I can't imagine being with a story for that long.
Well, it is one of the stories. It's one of our best sellers of yours in our store. Um, again, so obviously you can get it in the store. You mentioned Stephen King, which I was going to get to eventually. We'll talk about that in just a second, but I do want to read a review from your website from a cryptozoologist. It
Yes,
says, in the
Lauren.
exciting new genre of crypto fiction meets horror, the prolific writer Dale T. Phillips brings his talents to the fore. Join Dale on this exciting journey, written with a sound cryptozoological foundation, full of many surprises at every twist and turn along these shadowed forested pathways. Highly recommended. So, do you dabble in cryptozoology, or did you do a lot of studying for just the book?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, because if you ever read the 40 in Times and you ever read all these weird stories about these strange happenings around the world, you find that the Sasquatch, the Yeti, the Bigfoot, the skunk ape, they're all related. And after studying these, I'm like, oh, cool. And when I started delving into the subject of the Wendigo, I go, oh, well, what if the Wendigo, what if there's an actual physical manifestation of something out in these deep woods, and the people have built this legend around it, and boom, now we have two things coming together. And that's what I love to do, is I like to take one thing and mix it with another. And Lauren Coleman, who gave that quote, he is the head of the Cryptozoology Museum in Portland, Maine, which I recommend anybody who's in Portland definitely go see. It's all these strange creatures from everywhere, mostly U.S. centered, but I mean there are others from other places, and it's all the weird and wonderful creatures of legend and myth and mythology that have come out, and all the stories we tell about these, and what explanations we have, everything from chupacabras, to the Bigfoot, to all kinds of extinct animals. And the inspiration of Lauren, I was looking for an antagonist in the book, other than just the situation, other than the environment. I needed a human antagonist, and two things came together: a female antagonist and a cryptozoologist, and boom, I had it. I made the antagonist a female cryptozoologist who is rich, who's obsessed, who's brilliant, who's actually Loki. And the funny thing is I wrote this book, and before I read Joseph Campbell, and when I read Joseph Campbell, I go, oh my God, I've written the perfect hero's journey. And I realized that the characters in it were characters from the hero's journey. Here's the trickster. Oh, here's the mentor. Oh, here's the sidekick, all of this. And I went, wow. And now that I've read Joseph Campbell, it's like it perfectly fits. And that's what I love about writing. When you do something and you kind of write into the dark, and then you find out later it absolutely fits, just like puzzle pieces all together, just snaps like Legos. It's wonderful.
I've read a lot of Joseph Campbell. That one, Hero with a Thousand Faces.
Yes, absolutely.
What's the other famous one there? I just lost it. I had it. Anyways, Joseph Campbell is great with myths and legends. But so why the Wendigo versus any of the other crypto animals?
Many other legends have been done, and that was a legend I had read back then, and it captivated my attention. Here's this creature that of Native American mythology, but it's so widespread. I mean, this covers the north central United States and Canada, thousands of miles, all different tribes, the Cree, the Algonquin, the Ojibwa tribes, and many others all have this similar legend. And I go, well, what's there to this? So I started researching it, and I was like, this is fascinating. And this is this cannibalistic creature that only comes out in the harshest winters and is a shape-shifting creature. And the legend is, if you encounter it, you're likely to be turned into a Wendigo yourself and turn cannibal. And I'm like, wow. I mean, how can you not love a story like that? I mean, that's it. I mean, you got to start from there. And then what happens when the past intrudes upon the present? And what we think is a myth, a legend from the past, comes out to have an absolutely horrifying manifestation in present day. And I love mixing that past and present, the old world versus the new, the rural versus the absolute, the cityscape. Mixing that all together is just what I love doing.
So let's go back to writing under Stephen King. So was he a professor or a writing instructor at the time?
Yes, at the University of Maine at Orono. I was there about 9 or 10 years after he graduated. He came back for 1 year to teach as writer in residence. And by the greatest fortune, I was there that year. and went down and took all the classes I could from him, and was sitting there in the writing seminars, and we had very small ones, from the large English classes where the survey classes to, seminars where there were like 6 of us. And we were in his living room at one point, and I'm sitting there and he's, going through my story, and I go, this is like the coolest thing ever. So with training like that, I figured I can't wait. I have to be a writer. And a lot of life had to intervene in between before. I mean, I only published my first book, A Memory of Grief, 10 years ago. So I've gotten 23 books out in 10 years and hope to do a lot more if given enough time.
Well, next time you happen to speak with him, let him know that we exist.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Well, actually, you should have Joe Hill drop by, his son, because he lives in New Hampshire, and he's not too far from you.
No, he's not.
He's been known to do that too.
Yeah, he drops in at Jetpack Comics up the street, comic book store in Rochester there every once in a while.
Yeah, you'll just have to pull him down a little.
Yeah.
He's terrific too. They both are. They're both wonderful people. They're both totally gracious, fun. I mean, Joe Hill will take a picture with you, a selfie, and put it on his Facebook, and you can send it out to the crowd, and so, this is so much fun. That's just great.
So was it just technical stuff that he taught, or did he teach a certain, like, the genre that he writes in?
He taught both the genre and a greater love of the craft of writing, and he gave you reading lists of read the classics, read the classics, read in your genre, read the things that you like to read, and if you like to write the things that you like to read, because that's the things that are your passion. That's what you enjoy, and if you enjoy it, you'll write from that perspective. I mean, don't try to write to market, because people so much chase the market, and the market's gone by the time they finished it and got it out. Write the things that you love, that have passion and long standing, and that's why he recommended many of the classics that have stood the test of time, and they've done so for a reason. Is that why you write mysteries? Because that's what you love to read? Well, I write mysteries because I did love them when I grew up. I started with the Hardy Boys and Encyclopedia Brown, and moved on to other things, and graduated from there. Dashiell Hammett, Raymond Chandler, John D. McDonald, Jim Thompson, Robert B. Parker, Mickey Spillane, even that school of them. And I love that style of writing, that atmosphere that they gave. And mysteries are also good for a reason, because Raymond Chandler said the average book doesn't get read. The average mystery does. So knowing the genre so well, I said, well, I can write in it. And I had a situation, I had a setting, and I started to develop the character. And I said, well, I can make a mystery out of this. Somebody who's got to solve a death. Now, what is there more to that than I can develop? And in developing that, I created a character so powerful. I said, oh, this isn't a single book. This is an entire series. And that's the beauty of it. And now I've got other series in production that I can move on from there and tell other stories through other character viewpoints. Did you ever think of doing just straight horror or thriller like Stephen King or Joe Hill? Or well, that's just not your thing, but you decided if the right idea came, yes. I mean, Shadow of the Wendigo is the closest I come. It has horror elements, and a definite horror elements. And if you said it's kind of supernatural horror, so if you look at it, you go, well, that's it. But I do not do the style of Joe Hill and Stephen King, shall I say. Again, that's theirs, and they're tremendous at it. They're tremendous in taking a situation and a character and slowly tightening the screws until the tension becomes unbearable. The suspense is just crushing, and you're just wondering what's going to happen, and you can't wait to just turn that page and read more. I'm actually watching 11/22/63 on, I think it's Hulu now, and from Stephen King's book about time travel, going back and trying to stop the assassination of Kennedy. And to me, I've studied that a lot, and it's just fascinating to watch this character. And the poor character has to bumble through because he keeps making terrible mistakes, and I go, no, and trying to fix that. But it's just brilliantly conceived and a well-made series out of that. And like other series, I hope that somebody would be able to pick up my series, because from Longmire, from Bosch, from Rizzoli and Isles, from Bones, from all these series that mystery writers I've actually met and talked with have become very successful series on television and sometimes movies. I go, my series would make a great one.
Well, we were definitely going to talk about that. That's one of my big questions towards the end. Um, you ever think of writing anything like science fiction or?
Oh yes, my short stories appear in all different types of genres, all different types. I've got short story collections in science fiction, fantasy, magic realism, apart from crime and mystery and horror. So yeah, I'm all over the place. But a book length takes a very strong idea to carry it through successfully right to the end. And I've got lots of ideas. I mean, I could be another James Patterson and have a team of 6 just writing everything out for me, and I could just keep feeding them ideas until the end of time. But I can't do them all. It's the writing is one aspect, the promotion and marketing is another full-time career, and there's just not enough hours in a day to do it all.
Yeah. Well, I was going to mention that I finally got on the Hulu bandwagon, except for instead of going into the past, I'm going into the hopefully distant future, but hopefully it doesn't happen at all. But the dystopian Handmaid's Tale series.
Yeah, because I read the books and I watched the original movie, and I'm wondering if I should get into it because it's so horrific, and we were so close to making it happen, and we're still not that far away, and that's the scary part of it.
Yep. So you have your latest book is a little different than the ZACK Taylor series and
Yes. I was like, called... which one is that? When you write a lot of books, sometimes you're like, now, when did that happen? What book was that? And you're like, oh. And I've heard other authors talk about this too. Like, somebody asks them a question, they go, I don't know. You tell me.
The latest one that we have in the store, anyways, is Neptune City, a mystery. When LA detective Jim Lloyd reluctantly returns to his New Jersey hometown for a final funeral, the ghosts of the past combine with the perils of the present, and he is pulled into a world of secrets, deceit, and danger. So where all the other ones are set kind of in the north, well, I mean, New Jersey isn't in the Northeast, but in New England, Maine type thing, what brought you to, well, describe the book first, and then why New Jersey?
That is, Neptune City is a standalone, and there's this very cool video up on YouTube, Neptune City, and you listen to it. It's this music video, and it's so offbeat and surreal, and it sets a mood, and I loved that. And I love the concept of reunions, of going into the past, because that's time travel right there. You're going into the past and connecting with people, and the relationships have completely changed, but there's still that ghost of the past relationship within that. So you're mixing the past and the present. And as I said before, I love doing that. So the concept of a reunion, okay, New Jersey, because it is very different. And the songs of Bruce Springsteen talk about all this. It's growing up in these towns, and you feel trapped. You're almost pinned against the ocean, and you don't go to New York City, but you're trapped in your own little world of maybe cars and just driving that same endless loop and talking with the same people, and there's so little to do. And the lucky ones are the ones who escape that orbit. They're able to get out, and why they do that, why they're able to escape and get out, and what happens if they're pulled back into that. You can get sucked right back down into it. So all that was fascinating, and I built a mystery around that, and really like how that one came out as well.
What's the premise of the book?
It is a former resident of a town goes out to LA, finally escapes, and becomes a detective out there. And he comes back for one final funeral, and he's pulled into a mystery reluctantly, because he's like, I'm off duty. This is not what I came for. And they go, oh, well, there's a reunion, you got to come. And he's like, oh God, I don't want to. No, I got out of here. I left. And it's like, no, you got to come back. And it's how the past weighs us down.
One of the things I've learned while researching, or a lot of the other authors that we have coming up throughout the month, and I've learned this from the past too, is a cozy mystery. And didn't really understand what it was. I think I have it now. Have you ever thought about, well, describe what a cozy is? Yours don't appear to be in that subgenre, because they're ex-cops or ex-detectives and detectives. As to where my understanding of a cozy is just some ordinary person all of a sudden has to go and kind of solve a crime type of thing. Is that correct? If not, what is it? And have you ever thought
Very
about
much,
writing something like that?
very much so. There's many different subgenres of mystery. There's police procedurals where some officer of the law tries to solve a crime. There's the noir, which is everybody winds up screwed and being dead by the end. There's hard boil, which is what I write. It's the school of there's a darkness within there, and a person must, as Chandler said, walk down these mean streets without being himself mean, who is neither tarnished nor afraid. That whole genre is what I really love. A cozy is like the traditional mysteries, much like Agatha Christie for the most part. It's an amateur mostly who many times in a quaint English village who stumbles across a mystery and solves it. The bodies are kept off screen, the violence is kept off screen, there's no sex, there's no swearing, everything's nice. And the world is restored to a perfect order at the end. And they're very comforting because they became popular quite a bit, and especially in World War II, because you've got all this horror going on around you. And here's these little mysteries where something really bad happens, and yet by the end, it's all set to rights, and we can all go on back to our lives. And isn't it nice? And it's great because there's a particular genre, and they're much beloved. I mean, people just gobble those up by the fistful. And in fact, I'm going to be starting a series which is much closer to that than what I have been writing. It's about a female protagonist, and she definitely is an amateur, but she's going to get sucked into situations, but it's not going to be as bad as what I write. It's not going to be pure cozy, but a lot of times things aren't. Things cross over the lines.
I think when it finally hit me was I read I actually listened to it in audiobook form, but it was called it's out now, it just came out, but it's called The Windsor Knot by S.J. Bennett. I don't know if you've heard of that, but a pitch perfect murder mystery. If the crown were crossed with Ms. Marple, the result would probably be something like this charming Who Done It. The first book, I guess it's going to be a series, but Queen Elizabeth II secretly solves crimes
Oh,
while
dear.
carrying out her
Oh, dear.
royal duties. So there's
Yeah.
humor in it, but there's also the politics of the royal family. But then there's her working behind Scotland Yard to solve this. They're doing
Yeah.
their thing, she does her thing. It was hilarious. I
It
really
is,
loved it,
but
but then it kind of hit me.
to me, unless you're writing parody, a situation has to be believable. And having people in quilting groups solve crime after crime just isn't. My character, it's believable he would get in these situations because he starts and then he starts seeking them out. And he's got the background where he's able to deal with these people. I mean, I can't see somebody in a knitting group, confronting a real hard-boiled killer, because that just doesn't ring true for me. And it's not the kind of genre that I write, because I most of the time I don't even read most of those. There's some very good cozies. I mean, Barbara Ross from up in Maine writes the Maine Clambake series, and those are just wonderful. Those are nice. They're very located. There's a perfect summer read right there. Barbara Ross, the Maine Clambake series.
Right.
That's one example. Edith Maxwell's got about 4 different series of the Quaker Midwife, and she's got a country store mysteries. Sheila Connolly, who passed away last year, had about another 4 series, an orchard series, an Irish series, several others. I mean, they're wonderful, and the writers in them are usually very prolific because you can put these out very quickly because you have a world that you've already created and the characters, and you just kind of go through it and put a new plot in.
We
I
have a
like to do
few.
more than that, but then again, that's everybody to their own
Right.
taste. I mean, if you love reading that, just go for it.
We
I
do
just
have a
gave some
few.
great examples.
We do have a few cozy writers that'll be partaking in our series. I wish I could put the book with the name, but one of them has to do with cats in
Play
the
a Simon.
series. Yes. Yep. And one's a restaurant owner, I think, and there's murders in the restaurant or something. Anyways, we do have some coming up, but so let's kind of go a little bit back towards the very beginning there. You were a technical writer for um, software developers. Did that come before your writing? Actually, I had how I wanted to phrase it, but did that Well, because
Chicken or
obviously,
egg?
yeah, right. Well, I guess so. Because I guess writing for a software developer, writing the instructions and the technical jargon that they use and putting into something that people can understand. Um, did that help with you being able to write in general? Because you said you took a lot of classes on learning how to write. You took all the classes from under Stephen King. But did this kind of help you in that direction?
Yeah, they kind of went on parallel paths for a while, and I was, just pecking away at a book uh, and writing a few stories. But I also wrote for a historical newsletter. And a friend said, you have a skill at putting words together. You might want to look at technical writing as a career. And that was over 30 years ago. And when I did, I said, oh, you're right. This would be perfect. I can write clear directions because I think of how I would do it and then just write it out step by step. And some people skip steps because of assumed knowledge, things like that. So I got the best training I could at the time, which was Middlesex Community College down here, and embarked on this career. And I found that it's wonderful because although it's a different mindset, you have many tools that are crossover. You use the word processing tools, the desktop publishing tools in technical writing, which really helped me when I began my writing career. You have an editing eye. You can look at a page and immediately find, the mistakes in it because, you're so used to looking for them in your own work and other people's work that they jump right out at you. That's a really big help when you're editing your own work and other people's work. That jumps right out. You learn how to formulate cogent thoughts into, whatever it is, instructions, introductions, narratives, and that helps you with your mindset. So yeah, there is a lot of crossover and it really helped. I had quite a leg up, when I got seriously into writing because of all those years of having that background of, just typing and forming words together and making something work and working to deadline, which is something you always have to do as a technical writer. And when you're a writer, trying to get something out for an anthology or out to a publisher by a certain date or back to an editor by a certain date, that's absolutely critical.
Now, was it difficult though, as an writing instructions? Is it difficult to go from having to be very technical and short to the point to now you're a writer where you need to expand on things and add detail? And was it hard to get to?
Yes, they are absolutely two different mindsets. The technical writing is very cut and dried, very cold, very instructional. Fiction is expansive. However, because of my technical writing background, I write very, very spare books. I don't write the 80 to 90,000 words that traditional publishing looks for. I write 50,000 words. I write more like what Elmore Leonard said to do. Leave out the boring parts that people skip. I don't go into these lengthy discussions in a lot of cases, and I let the reader fill in those areas because I think I've gone around it enough to let them do it themselves and fill it in for themselves. Hemingway also did that. It's the concept of a Zen picture. You have a blue sky and you don't show the hawk in there, but you've set it up so that the person viewing it knows there's a hawk. I love that concept, and I've absolutely used that before.
No digs against Stephen King, but he tends to go off on long tangents.
Sure, because he writes every day, and
he
writes 10 pages every day, so he's going to have a longer, thicker book than anybody. And the thing is, he's skilled enough to be able to pull it off. Yep. I mean, you can say there's fluff, but go ahead and find it. I mean, because he writes so well, he pulls you along with it. I write very sparse because again, that background of technical writing, I want to get to the heart of the story. What's happening here? What's exciting about it? And I think a lot of these traditional mysteries from traditional publishers are padded. I mean, they want 80 to 90,000 words, and I'll look at it and go, I could easily cut 20 to 30,000 words because this stuff doesn't matter. And it bores me. And I do find myself skipping through a lot of it. So if you skip through my books, you're going to miss stuff because
yeah, that's the one thing I like to read is kind of short to the point, get to the story. But I do like a little bit, obviously, of detail to it, so I can get just a kind of a basic picture, but then let my mind expand on kind of what that looks like and fill in the holes.
No, good,
Um,
good.
so let's talk about the technicality or the technical aspect of your writing. So let's start with this is a term I learned way back last year when I started doing these Zoom events, um, which we have now close to I think 40 of them, and still more to come.
Wonderful.
Are you a pantser, or do
Ah,
you use an outline?
okay. Let me tell for the people that are listening in. Pantser is known as writing by the seat of your pants. So they call them pantsers, and they're usually a different breed from the plotters, the people who have to plot and outline the entire book before they even begin to write a word. And there's two entirely different schools. Now, being me, I use a little of both from time to time, depending. So again, I'm not one specific thing. I fall into other camps and I mix and mingle. Um, Outlining is fun when you can do it. Some people feel that that ruins the story for them. They want to be surprised themselves by the writing and the discovery. And I feel that's important because when you're writing, you must access the subconscious. And you can't do that from mostly from an outline. You don't know where it's going to lead. You're writing along, and all of a sudden something hits, and you have to go with that. You have to go down, as Jung talked about that myth pool,
I
that
was just going to
subconscious
say that.
world.
That's
Yeah.
very young style.
And Stephen King talked about it. He said, you go down to that myth pool, you go down into the deep, dark cave of the subconscious, and you dip your bucket in that pool, and you come back up to the light and then show everybody what you brought. That's the good stuff. And that's what he's a master of doing, and absolutely what I definitely shoot for. I have found a useful tool this last year in a book called Save the Cat Writes a Novel by Jessica Brody. And she breaks down successful books, successful narratives, and stories into this grand outline, which is kind of a hero's journey. Okay, this happens, the hero receives the call, refusal of the call, inciting incident, acceptance of the call, begins to take on the journey. Boom, something happens. Boom, part two. You're in a new world, completely different from the old world. You're meeting new characters, the B story character, on and on. And I started using that and found that my books, most of the time, followed a lot of that. And if I could fill in the blanks and connect that up, that was very helpful because you don't get stuck. The trouble with pantsers is you get this great idea. You get going, you get started, you get about 10 chapters in, and you hit a wall. And it's like, I don't know what happens next. And then it just sits there and you're like, I don't know. I know where the ending is, but I don't know how am I going to get from, point D to point Y. And that can put you, and that's what people go for at writer's block, because they're not really sure what happens next in the story. They're not sure how to get to that point. Having an outline with beat points, it's like this should happen, and then this kind of thing happens, and then this kind of thing happens, pulls you along in the story, so you've got breadcrumbs so you don't get as lost. You know how to get through that destination. It's a fuzzy little map, but it's more useful than not having one at all.
So in Jungian style, have you ever hit? I'm sure you've hit walls before. Have you ever? Because Jung was big on sort of dreams and symbols. Um, did you ever have a dream when you were stuck and just wake up and say, "That's what I need. That's where I need to go next"?
Yeah, I had that recently because I was having this big issue, and I woke up and went, that's it. That's the solution right there. Bang, was able to put that in, and just boom. It was from something I read, again, because I'm always learning. I don't think I'm at the perfect writer. I'm always trying to learn more, always trying to improve my craft. And I attended this online course, I think it was with Jess Lowry, and she's talking about editing your own work. And she talked about one thing. She said, good stories, many of these stories that pull you along have a big secret within it, a big secret. And you put that in at the start. And it's always that question. The reader wants to know, what's the big secret? What's that going to mean for it? And I woke up and boom, I had the big secret for the latest book. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's brilliant. I had all the elements there. and hadn't known that that big secret was the one that needed to happen.
Do you ever keep a notebook, or do you keep a notebook beside your bed, in case you do wake up with an idea? Do you write it down?
I don't do that, but I do have very colorful, very memorable dreams. And they don't usually give me the impetus for starting new work, but I do that normally. Any idea, any phrase, any character, any title, any concept, I keep charts for that, of everything. I've got a list of over 400 story titles I've got to write. I've got a list of 20 different books I have to write. I have, story ideas that, oh, here's a cool concept. Let's put that in. Where are we going to put that in? And I chart that in. Someday they're going to find my notebooks and go, oh my God, there's 50 years worth of stuff in here that we could do.
Well, that was my next question. Do you use notebooks? Do you use files? Do you use computer files like Word, or do you use that Scrivener? Scrivener was something else I found out about. Sounds like a pretty handy tool, especially for those who do the outlining, or actually
Right.
enhancers for that matter.
I bought that like a year or two ago, and I haven't been able to get to it yet, because I write things down on scraps of paper, transfer them to the computer, because with our carbonite backup, if anything goes wrong, I'm able to access. If the house burned down, I'd be able to access and get those files back.
Mhm.
So we actually had a computer die, and we were able to get back everything without a loss. And I'm like, yeah. And almost every writer will tell you that they've lost something due to some sort of computer
Yep.
failure.
Yeah. Have you ever gone along and you're looking at your notes in your notebook, and you think it said one thing, but then when you realize that you can't read your writing and it says something else?
That's why I type it out on a
That's why you
computer,
type it out.
because I scrawl it on a piece of paper and transfer it, so I'll know. And yeah, sometimes I look at my chicken scratching and go, what was I trying to say there? And that's why I have to flesh it out and put it on the computer, because that makes it all better, and you don't lose things.
Right, right. So what are some of the things you do when you hit a wall? We've
Mm.
had some people, they put on music, they go take a shower, they go for a walk, or they just say, forget this, I'll come back to it in a few days. What do you, some of the things that you do when you hit a wall?
Right. There are two sides of your brain, and that is the conscious side, the editing side, saying this stuff isn't working, you don't know where to go with it. And you must access that subconscious. And that's why people take walks, go for showers or drives. Tess Gerritsen said she goes for a long drive. Boom, pulls the car over and starts scribbling it down because it came to her. You're not thinking directly about it. You're approaching it from the sidelines. The subconscious mind is working on that problem, and many times they'll come up with a solution. With me, I try to work on something else, because if I work on another story, that original story will get jealous and come back and say, hey, wait a minute, you were working on me. Hey, get back here. And so, okay, all right. If the idea is strong enough, boom, go back and move forward.
Just a quick little thing. We will be interviewing Tess Gerritsen later on this summer.
She is terrific. She's wonderful.
Pretty
brilliant writer, a doctor. She's raised a lot of kids. She now lives up in Maine, and
Yep.
she's just a blessed person, and just does so many charitable events as well, helpful to other writers. And I just can't say enough good about her.
Yeah, my wife is a huge fan, so she's really excited, as am I.
Now, the fun thing is her Rizzolian Isles series,
Mhm.
she wrote those characters separately, did not have them together. They picked up a TV option and said, we'll give you some money. And she said, no, that's not going. Sure, give me the money for the option. That's not going in there. Next thing she knows, boom, right through the stratosphere.
It's a great show.
Okay, great.
Great show. So you mentioned, so let's talk about editing. How do you do your editing process? Do you do it, then do you give it on to, do you use beta readers? Do you go on to hire an editor? And we'll get into the publishing aspect later, but do you go through a publisher to have it edit? How do you edit your?
The mark of a real amateur is a person who thinks they never need any editing. Almost everybody needs an editor, a professional editor to look at that. It's great to have beta readers as well. Yes, I have a good editing eye, and I go through a story consistently before I pass that off to anybody else. I'll give it to beta readers, and I'll also give it to a professional editor who I pay for. Now, I get paid for professionally editing other people's manuscripts, and I still pay someone else to look at mine. So it's absolutely a necessity, because you'll always miss stuff. And they catch stuff, you're like, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh yeah, look at that. And it's always worth it to make that story better. And The real professional is one who will invest in their work to make it absolutely the best it can be.
Now we talked earlier about your covers. They're obviously beautiful covers. You
I
mentioned
love those covers.
you have somebody that does that. How did you find this person? How did you decide to go that route, finding a professional cover person versus just taking something off of Pixabay or something and throwing it up? Because I tell you what, covers can make or break a book.
And this is the one piece of luck. Now, some people have their spouse edit their stuff. Some people have a very useful spouse. I happen to marry my cover designer, and I didn't know her talents until 10 years ago when I needed my first book produced. And she started, going away at it. She came up with that idea. I married her, and my wife came up with this brilliant idea for this cover, and we've carried it forth through all these books. And she has a talent. She's done covers for a number of other authors as well, and given them covers that are absolutely beautiful and selling, and they love it. So I got lucky on that aspect. It's absolute sheer luck. But I will tell any authors out there, the cover can make or break you. You definitely need a cover that looks good in thumbnail on the internet as far as like 10 feet away, and it needs to reflect the type of book it is. I've seen authors that the cover is totally misleading as to the genre, as to what's inside. And you look at that and you're like, what the hell is that? Okay, it's a tree. What does that mean? Is it a thriller? Is it an ecological story? What is it? And sometimes it's just a complete mismatch, and you're like, ay, ay, ay. Come on, people. Get some helpful advice. Joel Friedlander, I think, has a website that shows different covers, good cover design. There's websites that'll also show you terrible cover designs, and you should look at that to see what some people come up with. And you're like, what were they thinking?
Yep. Yeah.
But definitely invest in something that's worthwhile, that will help to sell your book. That's the first thing that people see.
Not knocking, taking the stuff off the internet, but it still needs to make sense with the premise of the book. Now understanding where you got yours from and how it ties into the book, ties into the title and everything.
And not many people have that are lucky enough to have a cover that's so integral. That's why I can't go with other publishers, traditional publishers, because those covers are absolutely essential to what the book's about. That quote in the book, that title, is absolutely essential to the entire meaning of the whole book. I mean, that's, sometimes a publisher will give you a new cover from stock photography. They'll change the title, they'll change this, they'll change that. And it's like, they'll put a dog in it. It's like.
There's one book that we have of, it's a fantastic book. It's called The Art of Dying. And the cover is just absolutely fantastic. It's a thriller, and it has manacles. It has saws. There is kind of bloody. You can tell it's like a dingy basement type thing, and chains.
You know what you're in for.
So you know what you're in for, exactly. It's like one of the best covers I've ever seen. So I didn't look, and I forgot to look. I usually do. Did you do self-publishing on any of your books? Did you do, or all your books? Did you do traditional publishing on all your books, or did you do a mix and match? And why did you choose the way you published them?
Good question. Yeah, I started off in the traditional vein. I searched for years, trying to go with traditional publishers. I had an agent. We had one New York house interested, but months and months would go by with hearing nothing. And I'd send an email, nothing. Send an email, nothing. And eventually, after a while, I said, look, I'm going to be dead before this career takes off. And I knew the numbers. Only about 5 books out of 100 of traditionally published books ever sell more than a couple hundred copies. So basically, you're entering a lottery. So even if you win the lottery and get your book published, chances are it's going nowhere. And I knew that publishers were dropping authors after 2 or 3 books. In fact, someone that started about the same time as me, with similar in the genre, similar style, similar characters, very good writer. The publishers lost interest after 3 books, and boom, he hasn't come out with another mystery since. Well, I keep merrily away. So I went with a small press then, because I wasn't yet ready to go on my own. And they made some errors, but they were helpful. I mean, the books got out, and we got it out. After about 2 years, I realized I could do everything that they're doing. I could do it better, I could do it faster, and I could certainly do it with a lot more profit. Now, if I was still with that publisher, I couldn't have my books through you because I'd be losing money off every copy, because we'd have to, after your cut, we'd have to split what's left over, and I'd be losing money.
Mhm.
So now by going independent, I am able to publish exactly the way I want. Any problems are all on me. I'm the only jerk I have to deal with in the publishing industry. I get to do it exactly the way I want, at the price points I want, at the distribution styles I want, on the schedule I want. Everything is independent. But again, I use professionals. I have a tremendous cover designer. I use a top-notch editor. I have great beta readers who do that. And I seek blurbs from professional writers who have all praised my work and put their name on it. I mean, that is astounding. The generosity of so many writers. I mean, I'm considered in the publishing world a nobody because I don't sell 50,000 copies, the first year. And yet I've got these professionals who are willing to put their name on my book and say, this is really good stuff. You should read this. That's wonderful.
If somebody came to you and said, look, I'm writing this book, but I don't know if I want to go traditional publishing or independent publishing, what would you tell
I would tell them, you must read my new book,
them?
How to Be a Successful Indie Writer. In that, which just came out and in all formats, print, ebook, audio, I basically lay out what the differences are, what you should consider, my path and why I did it, and all the pros and cons of doing that. And so, yes, I mean, if you want, I can get you some copies in your store.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Because
that's absolutely essential, because you keep getting the same questions over and over. You keep doing this. I've given workshops, I've given seminars and talks on indie versus traditional publishing. And again, I say, follow the path that makes you happy. Now, here's what you can expect from each path. You can expect this, this, and this, and lay it out. And once they see it, they can decide for themselves based on the evidence. But there's so much out there that people think, I can't do it all. No, you can't do it all. You can't learn it all yourself, but you can go through a process of step by step, learning piece by piece and getting to there. And it took me about 2 years until I got 90 to 95% of what I needed to know before I went independent and said, okay, I have enough now to begin that process of getting the books out on my schedule, when I want, how I want.
I think that'd be great if you can get us some of those, because I know we get a lot of those questions
Okay.
from
And
prospective
again,
writers. And
it's a great price, and it's chock full of 40 years of information, which will condense somebody's search if they're looking to figure it out down to like weeks or months. And it has a list of resources that are unbelievable. So
Great.
they don't just take that, they can go off and find examples. They can find perfect resources to just further, because some of these subjects like copyright, that's a whole book in itself. I mean, learning some of these different aspects. And I say, look, there's way more here than anybody could write about in a chapter. You're going to have to go off and do some more research, but here's a couple of good places to go find that.
That's great. So what is one of the hardest things you found about the hardest part of going with, other than the profit sharing, going with a traditional publisher?
You
One
lose
of
all
those
control.
difficult things.
Traditional publishers now do what's called rights grabs, and they take all rights to your book, and it's out of your hands, and you have no more control over it. By staying independent, you have absolute control over that book and what happens to it. And you can do any kind of subsequent sales of translations, of any kinds of marketing. Somebody wants to make a video game out of it, a movie, anything, merchandising, you have all that. With a traditional publisher, they're grabbing all of those rights, and they're giving you pennies on the dollar for it. And the trouble is that you don't get a say in the title. They say, no, we want it to be this. And somebody says, put a dog in it because dogs sell more. We want to sell a few more copies. They'll give you editing that may or may not be good. And you may get the 25-year-old MFA that doesn't know what they're talking about because they haven't been in the business. They may give you a crap stock cover. I talked to one author, and another author that was with her publisher said, what do you think of my new cover? And she said, I liked it when it was on mine. They reuse the same stuff. And it's like, and again, they ask, because they pad that word count, they want a thick book that they can charge X amount of dollars for. So they want 80,000 words. You can't come in at 60,000. You've got to make 80,000. And so you might have a book that's padded with 20,000 words of fluff in it. And I've seen it.
Yeah, on the book cover aspect, we've had that come across ours where covers have been. I haven't had it happen in my store, but I follow an indie booksellers page on Facebook, and some will say, hey, we just got this book, and look, we just found this book on our shelves from 3 or 4 years ago. It's the exact same
Yep.
cover, different title, different author, but the exact same cover. Um, what's the hardest part of being an independent publisher or publishing independently?
Sales, promotion, and marketing. The thing you must understand is that marketing promotion is a completely different business from writing the books and publishing the books. It is a full-time job to do it properly, and it is a constant job.
Can you say
And
that again?
it's a full-time job and a constant job. You can't do enough of it, and it's just not the space that most writers are in. Most writers write for the sake of writing. They're not in the selling business. They don't start off writing to become marketers. It's almost impossible. And we have to work with, like you, independent bookstores. We have to work with distributors. We have to work with libraries. We have to work so many different places to get the word out. And now understand that there are millions of books out there already, and you're competing against that. You're also competing against every other form of entertainment, much of which is absolutely free. People right now can have an infinite amount of free entertainment. Why should they discover you? How do they discover your book? And why should they give you money for the stories you create out of your head? That's the hard part. And many writers don't understand that. They think, I've published a book, I'm going to get rich and famous. And I'm like, yeah, no. Now you're going to sell 150 copies, and then that's about it. But the thing is that by being independent, your book might take off at some point in the future, whereas traditional books go out of print. You can't get them. I've looked at the books of some of my friends. I can't find them as ebooks. I can't find them as print books. I can't find them as audiobooks. And I'm like, dude, you're missing half of your backlist. I've got every one of my 23 books is available in print, ebook, and audio. So no matter how a person accesses a story, they have access to that at a fair and reasonable price, because I don't overcharge. I keep my prices very low so that people can get them and get more stories for their money.
What are some of the more important, or what are some of the important aspects of marketing that people should be using? And what's like the most important
Ooh,
marketing?
boy. Again, if I knew that, I'd be selling one. I tell people, it's like, the rule of thumb is you should do about 20% of marketing and promotion to 80% of your writing. I do mostly 90% writing and maybe 10% marketing and promotion. And a lot of the marketing and promotion I do is one-offs like this. I don't go for the extended campaigns, which they're like, time all your books to come out here, do a pre-order, time it, have a book, an ad out here and here and here, all to be timed at the same time, and go 6 months in advance, send out your arcs, do all this. Like, if I did that, I'd never have time to write my books. I don't even have enough time to write all as much as I want to. So how do I justify selling a few more copies in the short run and have less product out there? I think that a writer wins by getting as much good product out there as they can. This is art. You have to put it out there. And if it's good enough, people will recommend it to others. I mean, that's what you need. But word of mouth is a horrible thing. You're working on the long tail, and most people just simply don't have the patience to see if their work will take off years from now. They want a quick, easy payoff because they've been sold that myth, especially from traditional publishers, that, right, oh man, your book's you're gonna be on the bestseller list. Those lists are gamed. They're all about velocity within a short time, selling X thousands of books at X number of locations within a very short time, a week or two. But they don't care. 3 years from then, everybody's forgotten about that book, and it's not even promoted. It's been pushed off the shelves because there's whole new crops of books that came in between that. You, as an author, are still pushing your book that you put out 3 years ago, and it's just as good as if it were fresh.
How important is a website and social media to you, or just in general?
I believe it's absolutely critical. First thing I do when I hear of a new writer, I exchange business cards, and I go and I look them up and I look at their website. If the website's a piece of crap, if it's totally outdated, strike one. I'll look at your books and see what you've got. What are your upcoming events, what's your backlist, what have you got out, where is it, where can I access it, all the different things. Social media also, I wouldn't be on Twitter and Facebook if it weren't for my writing career, because I wouldn't bother, but I only use that 99% just to promote other authors as well as myself on social media. And I do a lot of promotion for other authors as well on my blog, which a lot of people don't do anymore. I promote other writers. I have interviews with other writers on there. And I've got one coming up later this month with Vin Zandri, a professional writer. And he's just terrific. And he gave me a terrific blurb for my books. And I want people to know his work more. So I put that out for him.
I know one big aspect of marketing is events, in-person events, which obviously for the past 15 plus months or so, 14 plus months, haven't been happening. How has that affected your reach as far as
Taken
getting
a
your
big hit. And luckily I formed good relationships with people like yourself in bookstores. I was a good friend of the New England Mobile Book Fair run by Tom Lyons, and he moved a lot of books for me. I had a lot of events. I was there 4 times a year doing book signings, and we moved a lot of books. And unfortunately, due to their tearing down the mall where his store was, and with COVID hitting, unfortunately, he went out of business. And he's still looking for a new location, but that's one aspect. But the thing is for a writer to form relationships with bookstores, you have to be there physically. You can't just do it by email or phone. And how many bookstores can you get to? Luckily in New England, we have a great radius. I mean, I'm in bookstores in a number of different states. So my reach is pretty good for a person doing it all themselves. But absolutely, it's critical. I mean, social media puts you around the globe 24/7, 365. I mean, I've got people buying my work from other continents, and that's just wonderful. Whereas they might not know your store, they might not be able to order from you, but from other distribution channels, all kinds, ebook, audio, and print, they're able to access that all around the globe.
I will have to say that we are, in my mind, considered an official international bookstore. We've sold books over in France. I have a friend over in France who buys from us. We sold books to some people over in the Netherlands,
Excellent.
Canada, and 24 out of the 50 states.
That's wonderful, but shipping overseas is dreadfully expensive too.
Oh, they pay for it.
Good. Okay, great. No, keep up the good work. Well, you need to carry the books of Todd Robinson then,
Okay.
who he's big in France. He's struggling to get by here, but some reason France loves him. It's one of those things.
Okay.
And Dave Zeltzerman, who's coming tomorrow night to talk here, his books are big in Germany.
Okay.
He's got a big German presence. So talk to him about that. And
all right.
Why are your books big in Germany? I think my books would be good in a lot of foreign countries, and I would love to see translations. And as soon as somebody cracks the nut of good translations at a moderate price, they're going to make billions of dollars.
I bet, I just thought of this, I bet the statues that you have on your covers are probably somewhere over, I would say over in Europe, or
they exist
or
somewhere. Yes, somewhere.
Here's a good promotion for you. If you can guess correctly where that statue is located, here's a free set of books or something.
Unfortunately, not all of them come with attribution, so you can't always tell. But I suppose you could do a Google image search and hopefully come up with some. Yeah, that would be a great idea. Yeah, I know. I don't run a lot of promotions and contests like that. That's another thing. That's on my big 3,000 item to-do list, and it's way down there. Along with learning Scrivener.
There you go. So where you keep your books around 50,000, 60,000 words versus, the bigger books, the bigger word count. Have you ever done the NaNoWriMo?
No, I have not. I do sometimes tend to write in spurts, but I haven't been able. November is a hellishly busy month. I mean, wow. To add that kind of pressure on it, you're not going to get. Most of the time, you're not going to get something good. It's to spark productivity in people that need that jolt, because so many writers don't practice enough. You're not going to be a concert violinist by practicing 15 minutes a day. You're just not. You must, even professionals at the top of their game are doing it between 90 minutes and 3 hours a day, every day.
And do you have a set time that you
I
do you
don't.
have a
I don't.
ritual? Do you just
You
kind of
know,
do
they're
it?
like, you should write every day, you should have habits and everything. And again, I just run counter to every bit of acknowledged advice ever. I court the muse, and sometimes the muse isn't talking to me, and sometimes the muse grabs me by the shoulders and shakes me and goes, "Hey, I got an idea. Sit down." And I have to listen and I have to get it out. That's, last year I was working on 3 different books and I hadn't finished any one of them. They're all in various stages. I was like, this is bad. So I finished one, Neptune City. And before I could get to the other 2 and finish those, the Indie Success book came in and said, "No, you got to finish me next." I'm like, "Wait, you weren't even in the queue. You can't jump the line like that," but it happens. And so I had to get that out, had to get that done. Now it's going to be back to one of the other books. And then a book that I've had sitting for a year. It's edited, it's good, but it's not as good as I want it to be. And so I have to put in some time and really access the subconscious and really, really work hard to make that go up a level.
So you mentioned way back about how your Zach Taylor mysteries would make a good series. Who would be? This is kind of the fun part that I like.
Yeah, who's the casting for it?
Who's cast? Right, right.
Yeah,
Who would
well,
be?
unfortunately, Matt Damon is aged out. But after I saw the Jason Bourne films, I go, he'd be great because he's not traditionally super pretty. I mean, he looks rough enough, and in the Jason Bourne, he had the action style enough he could pull it off, and yet he's got that infectious grin. He can pull people in, and if they're not really, a lot of people are attracted to that, and that would be nice. But yet you can see his dark side as well. So, and now he's aging out, so it would have to be probably somebody coming up, in a 30-ish actor, because a lot of the action stars that I knew are getting older and are probably in a lot of cases too old. So I'd have to look around and see who's available now.
Now, would you want to be hands-on in the whole production of it, or the
You can.
writing of
When you
the
work with a
script, or
TV or movie company, production company, as soon as you sign that paper, it's out of your hands. Remember, your vision of the story is not what that team of people is about. They have producers, they have directors, they have actors, they have scriptwriters, they have everybody down to, the assistant is gonna stick a hand in and want to have a say in how that story is told. And the film editor, it's going to be completely different from what you saw in most cases. Very few cases. The Maltese Falcon, boom, we just filmed the book. Okay, great. And you got a great book out of it. And when they do that, they usually get a terrific movie out of it. If it's a good book, it usually makes a good movie the closer they adhere to it. But when they go off, you never know what you're going to get. And it's a crapshoot.
Mhm.
And you have very little say in it. They're like, "Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, you've told us your opinion. Now get lost."
Now you mentioned your books are in audiobook form as well. Did you have a say in who did the voices, or?
Yeah, there's a wonderful program. I will mention ACX program, which is how you can get your books done in an audio format. You post the project up on their website. You tell as much about the project as you will. The type of characters, the story, what the narrator should sound like, and you have a sample that basically the audition for. They will record that, send it back to you and say, "I'm interested in doing this. Here's my audition. What do you think?" And you get to choose from the people auditioning and determine how your project goes. That's what I love about it, because I have the say. And as the files are produced, you get the say in whether or not to approve them until they're what you want. And that book comes out, and it's your product, yours and the narrator working together, and it's fabulous.
Do you if you could have any actress?
Oh boy.
So
Gee.
the same thing with it being a film, or
Oh,
being
I haven't thought about who's the ultimate narrator. One of the narrators I do love is Will Payton, who does the James Lee Burke novels, the Dave Robichaux novels. He's absolutely brilliant in those. He did Cold Mountain too, I think, and I think he did another one like that. But he's got a brilliant voice and cadence for that type of book. And James Lee Burke is so beautifully florid in his descriptions and yet evocative. And Will Payton really brings that out. I mean, he has the perfect rhythm of speech for that, to bring it out to its fullest. And that's what a good narrator can do. So no, I haven't specifically said, oh, that voice of, David Attenborough or whoever, the Anthony Hopkins or whatever. But I would have to listen to them narrating my work, and then I'd be able to pick it.
It's just like a book cover with the hardcover, the hard copy can make a break or book. So a narrator can really make or break an audiobook. There have been some that I've listened to that were just phenomenally, and it's not a book that I normally would have picked up and read, but it was such a good story, the story itself, but just you add that extra layer of the narration, the right person to do it, and it made it astounding. And then there's others where the book is really good, the premise is really good, but the narration is just, be it a certain inflection on one particular word throughout, but you hear it throughout the entire 15 hours, and it just, or just
yes,
the
I
wrong
had that
tone or
with
something.
Paul Dwaron, who's a mystery writer from Maine. His books are set in Maine, and he had a narrator that could not pronounce any of the place names in Maine. And while listening to the book, my teeth were grinding the whole time. And I finally caught him at a conference. I said, Paul, what the hell? And he said, I had no say in it. See, that's another advantage of being indie. You get it done the way you want. My Shadow of the Wendigo, the narrator was so good on it. There was a mailman listening to the audio because while he's doing his route, he's got the earbuds in. And he stopped and he said, oh my God, this is so good. I have to let Dale know that I'm listening to it and how good this is. But he didn't have Wi-Fi where he was. He had to leave his mail route and go to a Wi-Fi spot before he could contact me. So my brag is about Shadow of the Wendigo. I stopped the US mail.
So one thing I noticed about your audiobooks is they're not available yet through Libro FM.
I have not found a way to produce that at no cost to me through Libro.
Okay. I don't know how it works.
If they expand their program to do that, I'm absolutely in. The program I use is no cost to me, and that's very attractive when you got 23 books out.
Yeah. Oh, I bet. Yeah, there is Libro.fm, for those who don't know. It's a competitor to Audible, and they have everything that Audible has except for obviously Audible exclusives. And we partner with them. We have an affiliate link direct to them, and anything purchased through our link on their site, we get a portion of sales. So, and they've been very supportive. They're a great company. Their app is fantastic. Works on all portable devices. And but the other big thing though is that those who have their books through Libro, we will definitely promote them. We can promote them.
I would love to work with them, and as soon as they get their program to production level of no cost, I'm in. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, when you're producing, the costs are editing, which can run from $500 to $1,000 or more per book, cover design, which can run you several $100s, production of this, which printing costs. Everything is a cost, and you either have to learn to do it yourself, find someone who can do it at a reasonable cost to you, or go without. And it's a barrier to many people who do not have the resources to be able to do this. And that's why people go with traditional publishing. They'll take care of all that. Well, they will, but they'll also take care of any profit that comes the way. The amount you get for an advance is going to be pretty much most of what you get for the book, in 99 cases out of 100. And that's from a couple hundred to maybe a couple of thousand. And that's all you're going to see out of that book. And people are sometimes still don't realize that even today with all the information out there. They're like, really? Yeah. Royalty checks, which will come maybe several years down the pike. And that's only after the advance is against returns. The return policy that bookstores have means that a lot of those books are returned. And so they don't get credit for them. The author doesn't get the credit. And so their advance might earn out or might not. And then that's all they're going to see. And then the book is basically cellared by the publisher, and nobody talks about it again, and may not even be available.
That's the one thing I try not to do, is do returns. So we buy in small quantities so that I don't have to do that. But then again, we've had some that have sat on the shelf for 2 years. I finally sold the last copy a couple weeks ago, and unfortunately I won't buy any more because it sat on the shelf for 2
But
years.
you
So that's
have limited space. That's the thing.
well,
You
that's
work
part of
against
it. Yeah.
a number of constraints. You must have the traffic of that product, and you only have so much shelf space. So you've got to have books that move,
Yep. Yeah.
books that appeal to readers.
And well, that's one of it. And the other thing is let people know where it is.
Yeah.
And to help it move.
You're
But
one physical location, and they have to come to you.
right.
So
Right.
this is what we're trying to do: is pull people in, folks. Support your local indie bookstore.
So in the last couple minutes that we have available, you mentioned that there is one that's in the editing stage right now. Can you give it any little hints as to what it's about without any spoilers?
Oh wow, there's two right now. I'm working on another mystery, which is the start of a new series, and I'm a good third of the way through it. And then there's another that has been done. It is a great concept, but it's so different. It's so non-mainstream and so not like the usual run-of-the-mill stories that we get now, that it's a problem novel, because again, it's crossing different genres, and it's difficult to do well. I'll say that it's the biggest challenge. That's the great thing, is I love doing challenges. The mysteries are great because after a while, it's coming. Shadow of the Wendigo was a huge challenge because I had a flawed book and had to correct that. And most people just toss away their first couple of books. But the story was so compelling, I knew I had to make it good. And I was able to do the hard work of over the course of years to make that better. This is a book like that. This is a great book that started from a terrific premise, but wow, it's a bear to do well. And that's why it's not as good as I want to make it. And that's why it sat even a year after the editor gave me edits back on it, because I just haven't been able to come back and focus on that exclusively to get that one out.
I hope we don't have to wait 30 years for it.
No, hopefully this year, if I can get the next one out, the mystery out, then that's going to come right after that, hopefully. And then I start to work on my cozy.
Any thought of doing any of your short stories from the past into expand them into more of a novella or a novel in itself?
Well, I get that at times. In fact, I had one story that was published and somebody said, "This is great. Are you going to do more like it?" And I was like, wow, for a standalone, I hadn't even thought of that. And it's again, that's another difficult piece. And I'm like, I don't know if I could replicate that. That was a brilliant one-off, but man, I don't know if I could do that again. Out of all the stories, I've had over 70 published stories, and I've got dozens more and ideas for hundreds more. Oh, I'm sure I could expand some of them. Absolutely. And I've got another list of ideas, just ideas and concepts that I could get done. They're not even in a story yet.
Any thoughts of putting them into some of them into just a collection, like
I do collections.
I've
got over a dozen story collections.
Oh, okay.
I follow Dean Wesley Smith, so I take 5 stories in a genre and put them out. And again, they're so inexpensive, it wouldn't even be worth putting them in your store, because A, most people don't buy story collections, and B, they're so inexpensive, there's no profit in it for you. So it wouldn't be worth it. But I've got, let's see, I've got about at least 10 that are 5-story books. I've got one that's 10 stories, one that's 20 stories, and one that's 30 stories. The big book of genre stories is the best. That's like 5 books in one. It's 5 different genres, 30 different stories, and it's only $12. I mean, and it's brilliant because you can dip into that and find something you like no matter what you like to read.
Can they find those on your website?
Oh, they certainly can. Yeah, everything can be found on my website. And if you'd like copies of that, I can bring some by. But like I said, most bookstores and most publishers don't like short story collections unless the person's super famous, unless Stephen King, somebody like that of that level, because it's harder to sell. But I love short stories, and I buy collections all the time, and I write collections because I love the short story format as well as the novel. And those are 2 different things, and not everybody can go from one to the other and do both well.
Yeah, I have noticed that over the past, especially the past year or so, collections, anthologies, and even biographies and memoirs just haven't been doing too well, at least with us. But
Right.
again, we just haven't hit the right one. So So if anybody wants one of those collections, any of the other books as well, it's www.daletphillips with two L's .com is his website, and of course all the Zack Taylor mysteries can be got, and the Wendigo and Neptune City signed
And if they want
copies.
anything else, they can order through you, and we'll get you some copies.
Yep, yeah. You can go to freethinkerscorner.com and purchase them through. Go to the New England Writers section of our website. You'll see Dale's picture right there under the. Actually, I think I still have you in the Maine category instead of the Massachusetts category. Which would you prefer?
Golly, I wouldn't mind being in both because I do straddle. I've been all over New England, and I mean, New England is my territory. That's really my home, and I've lived and worked in both of them as well as other places. But it's really one big territory. Let's just
Right,
that strip of land in between. But come on, it's all one big area.
right.
It's all local.
Well, for now, you can find them in the main section of our website. All those books there, and you can definitely leave reviews too. We have a comment section on each of the books.
Only good ones,
Individual
please. Only good ones.
So yeah, so you can buy it there, and then of course there's always bookshop.org, which we like to try. We definitely want to promote because they do help us out. They were super helpful and supportive, and especially a lot of bookstores who don't have indie commerce sites of their own were incredibly helpful during the pandemic, keeping a lot of the bookstores open. So we definitely want to thank everybody from bookshop.org. I also like to thank real quick Sisters in Crime New England for hooking me up with you way back when we first started. It's a great organization. We'll hopefully we did in person. We did a couple Zoom events last year, panels with them. Dale, you've been on a few of those panels with us, and they're a lot of fun. And as soon as we get word as to when we're going to have them, we're going to try and do 3 of them again this year over the summer. We'll put those up on the website and everything, and hopefully everybody can join us for there. So, but for now, again, DalePhillips.com, freethinkerscorner.com, bookshop.org. All the books are available in one or more of those spaces. Dale, thank you very much for being a part of it, kicking this off. I'm looking forward to working with you again, seeing you again, having you in person, and looking forward to this whole month of mystery stories.
May is mystery. Thank you, Chris, and thank you to everybody. I assume there's people out there listening, but I can't see you because I'm still on the Zoom meeting and you're all on Facebook. So, did we have anybody tuning in?
Yeah, we had some on Facebook. It will be available on our new YouTube channel. Probably later on tomorrow. In a few minutes, I'll just clean up the text, and it should be available as a video to download and look.
I had a review
Facebook
of Shadow
page.
and the Wendigo on YouTube. It just came out recently. I
forgot to mention that. Yes.
I'll put that out. That's my very first YouTube video and a review of my book, and I thought, hey, that's a great new idea. Now we've got to do more of that. That's another area for promotion.
Is that the one that Kara Como did?
Yes, Kara Como.
Okay. Yeah. You can find that.
She really liked the book and did a great review of it as a YouTube video.
Yep, you can just scroll through our post on our Facebook page because I had posted it on there. It's about a month or so ago. Yep. Just kind of scroll down, you'll be able to find that. But yeah, we'll get that up on your page on our site here very soon. So people
you're a one-man shop, so you know how it is.
Yeah.
And folks, to those who are listening, tune in tomorrow night because Dave Zeltzerman's going to be giving a talk, and Dave is a terrific writer, and he's also in the mystery genre, and he's got a lot of books. One of his books, Small Crimes, was made into an excellent feature film that's available on Netflix. And he's got a couple others that are in consideration from Hollywood. So definitely tune in and see what he has to say tomorrow.
We'll definitely talk about all that. So again, thank you everybody for joining us. And Dale, again, thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you. Good night.